Disclaimer, be civil and respectful in the comments, and I do not condone any ill will towards anyone. Hey everyone, this is me, TimeLiarG, and I wanted to start this video by talking about some memories that I've had with RuneScape over the years. And, not just older memories, but newer memories as well. When old school RuneScape came out in, I believe it was 2013. I sometimes get it confused with 2013, 2014. And, of course, going to be talking about when I first started playing the game in December of 2005. And, as I always say, every single time, I'm an 06 player. I really got into the game in 06. And there's a lot of memories that I can talk about. One of the more funny ones. And, I'm trying to keep this nice and calm and everything. Just trying to keep it all, just go with the flow at first before I start talking about what's been happening with, video games entirely, not just with RuneScape, but, gaming as an art form and just everything that comes with that, So I thought I would just talk about some funny stuff first, like, what I was doing back then. My neighbor first showed me the game. I think it was a few months prior to me actually playing it, but I was watching him play it at his house. He had, I think he actually had a dragon chain body at the time, which was, that was really expensive. I think when the dragon chain body first released and people started going to Califite Queen, I think it was 14 mil at the time or something, or 16 mil, which at the time that was absolutely insane. It was such a rare item. I don't know how he got that, by the way, because both of us, we were pretty much noobs at the time. He was actually playing on his cousin's account. Not his cousin, his brother's account. I don't know why I said cousin. That was strange. I don't know why I said cousin. But no, he was playing on his brother's account. So I guess, his brother must have been pretty good at the game to get him that. Again, it might have actually been my neighbor himself that got that instead of his brother. The neighbor I'm talking about anyway. They're both neighbors. They both live together. And he also had, the classic D-Med, of course. This was before the Naze Not helm came out and everything. And I forgot what other equipment he had. Don't really remember. I don't think the Abyssal Whip was out at the time. But aside from that, when I first, I started to realize how cool Dragon Armor was when I got around Mithril or Adamant. I'm like, that is an armor set that looks completely different than the other ones. It reminded me of other RPGs at the time where, let's say that you have, just the first few tiers of armor. They all follow the same trend. They all look the same way. And then you have, one of the quote unquote final tiers, right? And it looks completely different. It's, another equivalent to that in an RPG would be finding new enemies, except they're the same enemies from earlier, just with a different color palette. It's similar to that. So I always wanted to try to get a dragon chain body, and, I never managed to get that. I never actually managed to get a dragon chain body, even going in, how much was it in 2000? I think I kind of, lost interest in Dragon Armor around 2008. I did have the armor that came out. It was some kind of corrupted dragon or something for free to play. And I think it degraded after 3 hours of combat or something, which was, it was an interesting thing to add to the game. I actually really like the look of it. I think that was around 2008. That's something I have fond memories of as well. But I did kind of slow down. I stopped playing the game around 2008, 2009. And 2011, I went back in to go look at the EOC stuff, Evolution of Combat, and by the way, if you're curious, the free trade and wilderness removal that happened beforehand, way before 2011, obviously. Well, I say way before, but it wasn't that long before. I didn't really mind that too much, because I was a player that really kept to myself. I didn't really bother. And the Grand Exchange didn't bother me either, but I can see how that could, be a detriment to the game. And it was, socially speaking anyway, with people being social with one another. But I didn't really mind those updates too much. And I the one thing that I have really fond memories with was I remember for some reason really loving the warlock slash witch outfit from I think it was a 2008 Halloween event, and that was one of the cosmetic pieces that just really stuck with me. And then for some reason, I think just recently actually they re-released that. I don't know why they would do something like that, because it's not like the people that get it now are going to have the same memories with it that I did back in the day. I got that those cosmetics when I was younger, and I have memories associated and attached with those. That's why, people complaining about not getting an item or something in an MMO, when it's an MMO, you might want to find like a different game. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but if you're complaining about a discontinued item that people have special memories with, and that's the reason why it's special. That's why in top 10 videos you see, are people still making top 10 videos? I don't know. That's why in top 10 videos you see, stuff like party hats in them, that they're so iconic because they're discontinued. You can't get them anymore. I mean, you can trade them, obviously. After the Santa hat, they stopped doing the tradable holiday events. Items, I should say. They obviously didn't stop doing holiday events. I woke up recently, so I apologize. My commentary is a little bit off. And by the way, sorry for the cars outside, if you can hear those. I have a new setup at the moment, and I'm pretty much right next to the window, so that's why if you hear me stop talking for a bit, that's just me seeing stuff happening outside. I should probably, I don't even have blinds on the windows yet. Should probably get those so I don't get too distracted. So yeah, sorry if I go silent for a bit, but this is just a nice relaxing, talk. Again, before I start getting into the other stuff now, almost got into it there talking about these people that use the term, and by the way, I have nothing against anyone that I'm going to be talking about in this video, any kind of groups of people, any kind of labels that anybody wants to apply to themselves, what anybody is, I don't have anything against anyone, and I would ask that you also show respect to everybody that I'm going to be speaking about. For example, the people that use the word quote unquote FOMO, in terms of wanting everything in an MMO, everything, not just discontinued holiday events, but they think that they should be, for the most part, just, handed everything 100% completion. They think that they should be able to easily access a 100% completion in an MMO, if that's even possible within the MMO. A lot of MMOs, you can't do that, It's not made for that. I disagree with stuff like achievements and collection logs, because I feel that there's a portion of people that treat video games as a checklist, and it's kind of dictating the way you play. Instead of everybody having their own adventures, it's kind of funneling players into a certain play style, a certain play set. I think it's wrong, and it took me a while to add achievements to my own game, because, well, first off, I didn't know how to implement Steam achievements into a game at first. I'm not too good with coding and whatnot, writing scripts, but I eventually used someone else's script with permission, of course. Well, I say with permission, but it's, it was for commercial use purposes, though, so I could use it. I credited them and everything. I always give credit. For the most part, I just uploaded a video. I think it was a week and a half, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Right, I actually forgot to credit someone in it, and I always feel bad about that, so I always put them in the description. Sometimes we'll even take down a video and re-upload it. But it's always important to give credit where it's due, when it's due, especially if you're using someone else's assets, someone else's script. What was I saying here? I was saying that these people, They love the stuff like the collection log that was added in OSRS. They love that kind of item in the game, and if you like that, that's fine. If you want the game to dictate how you play, if you want a giant arrow pointing you in the direction to go in, that's fine. But for me personally, I think that's ruining the experience of the game. The thing that RuneScape 2 was one of the most immersive games for me to play. and it's a medieval fantasy game. And some people will question that and say, what do you mean immersive? Because, it's a game about dragons and, magic, and it just you have a whole bunch of just fantasy elements in there. And, that has nothing to do with immersion. Real life is not, it's just because you're putting real life elements into a game. If you're trying to make your game look as realistic as possible, it sometimes it just won't be immersive. What makes it really immersive is, I've only thought about this, a few times in the past, but it's just, I think it's the exploration and the freedom that you have in a game. And when I first started playing RuneScape, right, I forgot if I was playing that at my neighbor's at first or if I was using my grandfather's computer for a while at my grandparents' house. And then I eventually got a laptop. That was around, I was actually using my grandfather's PC for a long time. It was 2008. I remember getting that laptop for the first time, and the RuneScape title screen was the one with Zamorak and Saradomin as statues down a large valley, with the two walls, not really, it wouldn't be considered a valley, but it was like kind of like an alleyway kind of. I do like the late RS2 era. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like summoning. I personally, I was kind of indifferent towards it. But to get back to the point, when I first started playing RuneScape in 2005, 2006, I just immediately, I didn't know what to do. Now, what was, what's the difference between now and then? Back then, when you didn't know what to do, what did you do? You go around, maybe talk to some people in the game, you walk around and just take in the world. You immerse yourself in all the characters in the game. You're just walking around Lumber's Castle, talking to everybody, starting quests up. You're just, and sometimes, hey, you might have the Scholastic Guide, which I bought when that came out. I remember seeing that at the school book fair. I'm kind of tempted to say the name of it, but I don't like mentioning real life locations like that. Not for my sake, because I'm an open book. I say everything about myself, but just due to the fact that there are people actually stalking me, which, you should not do that. Just don't stalk anybody. I don't condone that. That's weird. That's really weird. That's why I don't want to mention some stuff about my life. Not for my sake, but I've had people try to call up my family, except it wasn't my family that they called, and they were messing with random families they thought, were related to me because they have the same last name. That's unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable. So that's why I don't really want to mention certain stuff like that. But, yeah, it's, and by the way, some of these people I just want to point out is, I'm not going to mention them by name. I'm not going to mention who they are this time. I'm just going to say that these are the same individuals that don't agree with what I'm saying right now about the game, and they want to rewrite the game in their own vision, which is propagandized. They just want to spread politics into our favorite games, and it's the same kind of people that say all art is political when it's not. They'll tell you that Mario Bros is an allegory for consumerism, communism, capitalism, anything. And it's disturbing. It's disturbing to me that there's people that live on politics from every single political side, every single political angle that you could possibly have, every single political view. It's disturbing to me. But anyway, I got a little bit off track. I'm going to be going back into that soon. But, yeah, I just want to say, what's the difference between now and back then? Back then you explore, just the world, you take everything in. It's a lived-in world where it feels endless. It feels absolutely endless. And it's not just because, we were younger either. right? It's not just because we were younger. It's because now everything is so documented, I think. And many people think that they have to use guides. You don't have to use a guide for a video game. That ruins your experience, you know? And, someone I know was playing Persona 3 for the first time. And, because I recommended the Persona series to them, because I thought they would like it, right? I thought they would like it. And they did. They loved it. They absolutely loved it. And, I got them to stop using guides because they opened up an entire guide on how to get all the social links, how to meet every character in the game, see every piece of dialogue, all boss weaknesses. And they're just, reading it as they're playing through the game. I'm like, that is not why. Why would you play the game? And you can play the game however you want, obviously, right? But at that point, are you actually playing the game, or is the game playing you at that point? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. Again, anybody can play the game how they want to. But at the end of the day, I just think just minimizing the game and going and reading a guide, opening the game up, and just not experiencing things for yourself, really. I mean, it's just, imagine this, right? Now, I'm not going to be comparing Persona to Yume Nikki or anything, but imagine like playing an RPG Maker game, right? I was going to mention the certain genre of RPG Maker game, but I don't know if I'm allowed to, say that, say that phrase on here. But what I'm referring to is just these RPG Maker games that have really crazy stuff in them, where each one feels like, each one feels like a trip to another world, a trip to another realm, right? You're just going around and taking everything in, exploring, just like RuneScape back in the day. And just imagine opening up a guide for something like that, to try to get all the effects immediately, like Yume Nikki or something, or if you're playing some other kind of, RPG Maker game, I don't know. It's not made for that. It's not meant for that. And speaking of RuneScape, what's really not meant for the game is there's this subsection of newer players, and there's a lot of good new players, by the way. I've met many when I'm streaming RuneScape, old school RuneScape, RuneScape 2, whatever, RS1 even. When I'm streaming any kind of RuneScape, right, there's new players that come in and they say, hey, I started playing and I just got Void for the first time. This is awesome. I absolutely love seeing that. New players are who we have to pass the torch to. And, I still feel kind of new myself because, I started playing around 05, 06. And, again, mostly I started playing, I want to say in the middle, right? I started playing a lot in the middle of 06. Funnily enough, it's when the Falador, that Falador stuff happened. What's weird is me and my neighbor, we didn't actually see that happen or hear about it happen at all. We didn't even know that was happening in the game. It was only until later in life I learned about that. I saw it on YouTube, which is funny. But, well, I have to remember what I was talking about. I kind of get distracted. But we have to pass the torch to these newer players and everything. And I'm just saying that there's a section of players that they are new players, but they don't act like new players, right? They will tell you that you're bad at playing the game for not having an Infernal Cape. And they'll tell you that you are bad for not maxing when that's never what the game was about. RuneScape was never about getting 99s, and the Gower brothers didn't even intend for people to get 99s at first. They didn't intend for people to go do everything. Back in the day, in RuneScape, I don't mean to sound like an old man here, but back in the day, everybody had their own job. Some people were crafters, some people were smiths. You would, just focus on crafting only. You would only focus on crafting, or, you're a skiller, you're getting, you're just skilling. And of course, that's still a thing, but not in the same way. Back then, you would have someone making glories for people. You would have someone making armor for people. Just look up Blue Rose from, RS1. It's stuff like that. That is so amazing. It's everybody working together. Nowadays, there's barely any social aspect to RuneScape anymore. And the players, I don't blame them for not typing because, we started to use, chat services around, around like 2000, 2008 or so. Forums, forums got really big in 2008. And, I started using forums more. It's normal for people not to really type in the game because of how many options you have to talk and everything. But I think someone actually just dedicating their entire account to being an armor smith and someone dedicating their account to, chopping logs for other people and actually buying and selling them from, again, I don't, it just the stuff with the GE kind of ruined that as well. But for the most part, people all have their own jobs. And I just want to say if you're going to try to talk to somebody about how they're not maxed, just what was your job in the game, right? What was your job in RuneScape? What role did you play in this role-playing world that was made for role-playing? You're just sitting there, not messaging anybody, just going for max. For what reason? Why did you max that account? Was it for the benefit of any other players? Was it just why? Just because you can? Is that why you did it? It kind of reminds me, this is going to make me sound younger than I actually am here talking about Undertale of all things. But someone just mentioned this the other day in a Deltarune thread on V. So this is why I'm bringing it up. But someone was just talking about this. It reminds me of how Toby Fox, has no achievements in Undertale on the Steam version, obviously. And his philosophy of, player choice, right? The choices that the player makes and everything in the game. They didn't have to do do certain routes, a certain route in the game, but they did. Avoiding a word for monetization's sake, but they didn't have to. They didn't have to do a certain route, but they did anyway, right? And that's a player choice. And he rewards them for doing that route, right? There's more content to it, but the point of the game really is exactly as it says on the store page, right? You can play this RPG without going around and making everybody miserable. Like you're not grinding for experience or anything. You're not grinding for XP. But yeah, and that actually aligns so right with RuneScape, actually, like RuneScape's philosophy. Like you don't have to go and get experience. You don't have to, and that's what it was never about. That term XP waste is such a bad term for the game because people are not playing the game as intended. And you know what the strange thing is? I've had a comment. I'm not going to show this, by the way. I've had a comment on one of my videos. It was on one of my RuneScape videos. And it was someone saying that I'm not a veteran of the game because I don't have an Infernal Cape. Didn't the Inferno come out in 2017? What are they even talking about? How are you saying that I'm not a veteran because I don't have the Infernal Cape? Fun fact, most veterans of the game don't actually have an Infernal Cape. And they don't even care for, OSR as a whole bunch for the most part. They just care about RuneScape. They care about RuneScape 1, RuneScape 2, sometimes even RuneScape 3. Right? And by the way, this is something else I'm thinking about when I'm recalling some of this stuff. I'm thinking about this one post I made on my forum, on my blog. There was some comment I saw that kind of made me want to make this video to begin with. And I've made videos like this before, by the way. I've mentioned this comment before. Again, this is a different comment that I'm not going to, post. I'm not going to show on the screen. But this comment was something that really made me, really made me want to stand up for the game and the history of it and the culture of it, all the players in the past and all the new players that will play it. It made me want to stand up for them and just what the game is as a whole, just RuneScape in general. And that comment was, I'm going to try to remember what it said. It was someone mocking and laughing at a YouTube title because someone had RuneScape 2 in their YouTube title because that's what the video was about, right? It wasn't about OSRS. It wasn't about RS3. It was just about RS2. And this person claiming to know what RuneScape is, you could consider them one of those quote unquote tourists, right? And I don't use that, in a mean way. I'm not trying to sound rude, but there's a word for everything, right? And this one matches pretty well with what the comment was actually saying. There was something, in the comment that was just mocking and insulting the YouTube title, whoever made that, the one specific YouTube video. It had to do with music from RuneScape 2, right? So this RuneScape 2 music video, I'm not talking about an RSMV, right, from back in the day. This was actually a newer one. But this is, by the way, I loved a lot of those videos from back then. I actually just refound some recently, and I commented on them again because those still deserve attention to this day. But this guy's comment, this negative comment that was directed at this uploader, which again I do not condone, and I definitely don't condone what that comment was saying because it was absolutely ridiculous. It was mocking the title simply for saying RuneScape 2. He said, what do you mean, RuneScape 2, haha. I didn't even play RuneScape 1. And like he's trying to say that, there's no such thing as RuneScape 1 or RuneScape 2, basically, or RuneScape 3. He just thinks that there's RuneScape. Now, it's so weird. Why would you go on the comments of a RuneScape video and say that? Why would you, like, if you're not interested in RuneScape or you have no idea what it is, why would you pretend to know what it is? And that's something else I wanted to get into, is a lot of players now are hyper political, and I don't want to mention any sort of regions at all, but if you think of a country, right, and I'm not calling anybody out, I actually live in this country, all right? I live in this country. I don't associate with the country. I don't associate with any kind of political ideals here, but I'm talking about the U.S., all right? I'm talking about the United States. A lot of people here are very political, and I mean more so than any, I research history a bunch, even if it's just internet history, right? But, nobody has ever acted this political. And I mentioned this before, but the most I'd ever see was on Newgrounds back in the day with people making George Bush animations. And there was only like one or two that I saw. All right. I did not see any. You can't go a single second without someone talking about a politician or any kind of public figure, anything to do with any kind of situation that's happening in real life. It leaked over to every piece of art. So now you have people actually claiming that all pieces of art are political. A game releases and you have people saying that it's woke, it's not woke enough. It's frustrating. What happened to a game just being a game? What happened to a piece of art just being a piece of art, which games are, by the way? Any kind of product, that you're making, whether it be an art piece. And I use the word product, right? But I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm saying like, in a piece, something that you produced, right? That's what I mean by product. Product might not be the word for it. It's not something you're trying to sell necessarily, but a piece of artwork, that can be a piece of music, a painting, a game, unless it is actually, made for propaganda purposes, right? I wouldn't consider propaganda to be art, but that's just my own opinion. Hey, you can have your own opinion, of course. See, that's something that's the difference between what else I'm talking about here. Like sometimes if I say an opinion, I will make it clear that it's an opinion. There's a difference between facts and opinions, obviously. But you have all these political sides in America that are trying to claim that a video game is theirs. You have both sides just trying to, and everybody in between trying to place a flag down. And quite literally, too, considering that there was a certain event that was removed from the game just recently, which I'm very thankful for. I am very thankful for Mod North for taking politics out of the game. Because there was a group of people that, again, I'm not insulting anyone for any kind of labels or anything, but I'm just going to say that pronoun selection did not exist in video games. And no matter how much the old school RuneScape wiki admins, such as the one who was stalking me, supposedly anyway. I'm just gonna use the word supposedly, but I have some of my own evidence that I've shown off multiple times at this point of them doing it, and they also called me a bigot for saying that I do not agree with violence against certain races. So. Or a certain race in specific. I said I do not agree with that. I do not condone that. And they banned me for the reason, quote unquote, bigot. So there's your old school RuneScape wiki admins for you, or at least one of them anyway. So I think that's pretty strange, but I'm going to be talking about that later again. You have these groups of people that use these neo-pronouns in bio, which of course pronouns in bio never existed before, prior to around 2016. You can just simply go on the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, and there's a reason why that website, that archive, has been getting into a lot of problems, is because these people, they don't like history being archived. They want to go into your old internet forums and wave their flags around, wave their pronouns around, and basically take over your hobby. That's what happened to furries. That's what happened to goths. That's what happened to a whole bunch of old internet forums, obscure internet forums. If you go on NeoCities, for example, and you try to look at people trying to replicate, the 2000s, you can point out which ones are clearly not an imitation of the 2000s. It's just it's bad, right? You can just tell that it's not 2000s at all, right? They're trying to rewrite the 90s and the 2000s to say, oh, look how quote unquote inclusive that is. And then you have the opposite side going in the absolute opposite direction, which is just equally as bad. And they're saying I never existed back then because of my, what I was born as, right? You have both of these sides, which are despicable. I'm just going to say it. Both sides are absolutely despicable. And, I get a whole bunch of negative comments from both sides. You have one side telling me that I'm a degenerate and one side telling me that I'm a bigot. And both sides are saying that the other side is harmful. I think both sides. I think if you're walking around with a political label on yourself, a flag, if you're using a flag that is supposed to represent equality, quote unquote equality, why is it that there's even a flag to begin with if you're just like anybody else? I'm just like anybody else. Me and my husband are just like anybody else. We don't have to shine a spotlight on ourselves for what we're born as. And that's what does not belong. That does not belong in RuneScape. All right? That does not belong in RuneScape. Having an actual pride event in RuneScape is despicable. Bringing someone's identity, what they're born as. I don't like using the word identity, by the way. But what they're born as, right? Bringing that into the game. And by the way, these people that do this, these people that try to, and by the way, it's not us versus them. I'm not even talking about any specific group right now. Just the people in general that want to spread politics in the game. Why even do it to begin with? What are you trying to accomplish here? These people, if you compare like the normal average person, whether they be straight, gay, lesbian, trans, I want you to think about something here, because I'm one of those things. Me and my husband are one of those things, right? I want to ask the question of, what's with the statistics charts of the people identifying as certain things? Because there is a huge spike on statistics charts. If you just go on the Wayback Machine or the Internet Archive, you will rarely see one of those kinds of people, right? And again, I don't mean that in a bad way, right? Me and my husband, we're married, and we're like there's nothing to be proud of, really. I'm proud of him for who he is, and that does not include a sexuality, obviously. We're proud of everything that we've accomplished through God, Heavenly Father God, and Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We are proud of our guardian angels that help us day by day until we get to the afterlife. And what is there to be proud of this? There's a huge difference between these quote unquote pride people and a normal homosexual, your everyday homosexual that just keeps to themselves, like me and my husband do. And I'm only mentioning this right now because of this topic, right? And these are the people that want to go into your hobby and try to make it about them. It's egotistical and it's history rewriting. They're revisionists, and in my opinion, a revisionist they shouldn't consider themselves part of it. That should be its own political ideology. It's just being a revisionist at the end of the day. And I don't agree with labels whatsoever, labeling, putting a pronoun in a video game that you select from and choose from and putting it in your biography, that's just telling me that you want me to refer to you as something. You can put king or queen in there. I'm not going to do it. You have to earn my respect. Why do you think that why are you so egotistical that you want to put something like that in your biography? What have I done to you for you to want to force me to refer to you a certain way instead of just treating you like a person? Why don't you just want to be treated like a person? Why don't I just come up and say, hey, what's going on, man? What's going on? And I use that with men and women. I go up and I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? Pretty much everything was gender neutral back then, back in the day. Like, nobody cared, Nobody cared about who you really were, But I don't know. And, these, I want to talk about something as well, by the way. Someone saw my blog on my website, and they saw the post I made about RuneScape, and I just wanted to talk about this real quick. So I'm gonna go to my my post right now that I made on this. Is one of my favorite things that I've written, actually. Here we go. RuneScape mysteries, oddities, rumors, trivia, and secrets. And I made this. Let me see what the date is. I made this in 2024. And let me see. Oh no, I didn't make this in 2024. My bad. This was, I was in the process of writing it on 6/12/2023. And I like reading dates off, by the way. Just, I archive stuff. I'm obsessed with, just adding dates to everything, including this video, which is currently Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. So I made this video not this video. I did make a video version afterwards, but I wrote this blog post about so many hidden things, like weird stuff in RuneScape, like the golden tools you get, in Priest in Peril, the Blurberry badge, Gianni badge from RS1 that supposedly existed, which I don't think it was actually obtainable in the game. Nobody really knows for sure, 100%. Just stuff like that. The Ring of Wealth affecting other stuff. I had a theory on that. Like there's a hidden luck stat in the game or something. It's just stuff like that. And, the display tee from RS1. The Mysterious Wilderness Volcano, that's another one. But I had this entire thing here, and I mentioned in this, right? I think what someone had was some kind of bot that was scraping for certain words or something, like quote-unquote RuneScape Archive, for example. And who knows? Maybe they did actually read through my entire blog post, but this was a person that goes scavenging for the RuneScape Archival Project or something. Let me see. RuneScape Archival Project. The RuneScape Archive Project. This is it. So he was, I guess, was he one of the higher ups here or anything? And by the way, I'm not, I'm not saying anything bad about him. He just went and contacted me, and he was asking me for my archives because I said that I had a lot of old RuneScape archives, which I do, and I'm not sharing them because of something that someone did in the past. Plus, that situation where the RuneScape Wiki admin, one of the RuneScape Wiki admins, wrote terrible things about me online, and I have proof that they have been, going to entirely different websites like Wikifer and writing bad things about me on there too, right after I messaged them online. Not even a few minutes later. Well, like 3 to 5 minutes later. And nobody has edited that in a long time at that point, before that point. And that is not a coincidence, right? That would be one coincidence if it actually did happen that way, but some random person just starts calling me a racist. Oh, well, hey, they wrote down on the Wikifer page that they got banned from the old school RuneScape wiki right after that RuneScape admin banned me. I think that's what happened anyway. I have a video on this. There's probably more accurate details in that. But, yeah. But yeah, someone from the RuneScape Archival Project. I want to see their team here. I'm actually looking through their stuff right now. Again, I'm not going to say the person's name. I was just curious who it was. They have a Steam. They added me on Discord to message me, though. And the reason why, I don't want to share the archives, I will admit, it's kind of like an out of spite thing, because this person, not the person that added me, by the way, he didn't do anything to me. I saw that he had the RuneScape Wiki admin added, and that made me not, that was one of the reasons why I didn't send anything. Right? I'm not going to send the archives that I have to him or her. But, just for that reason, but there's also another reason aside from the wiki admin. And there was someone on YouTube that makes RuneScape history videos, and it's probably not the one you're thinking of. It's most likely not the one you're thinking of. I just want to say that, please leave everybody to their business. Do not approach anyone and ask them, hey, did you do this? Don't start anything, please. I genuinely mean that too. Just leave everybody to their business. This happened in the past now, but I still want to hold on to my archives. And by the way, another reason, right? A fourth reason why I don't want to release the archives is because there's people that want to rewrite this RuneScape history archive, this RuneScape archival project. They want to rewrite RuneScape's history to say that, quote unquote, pronouns have always been a thing. When they definitely know what you mean by pronouns. We're talking about neo-pronouns, like pronouns in bio, showing off your pronouns in RuneScape, wearing pride flags all over the place in RuneScape. They want to rewrite history and try to say that RuneScape has always been quote unquote progressive. Now, I will say there are political quests in the game that have been there for a long time, right? There was, the Goblin quest line. I mentioned this in another video because, this is one that people bring up saying that quote unquote RuneScape has always been political. And I have to say that is definitely, the quest line is definitely political, and it's political in probably the strangest way ever, where, I don't even want to talk about it really because it's kind of awkward trying to navigate my words, trying to, talk about this. But the Gower brothers, we all know what the Ham members are based on, right? Right? There's nothing awkward about that itself, right? There's nothing awkward about that because they just want to make, this kind of the Gower brothers wanted to make an allegory, right, for something. So we know what the Ham members are, wearing their hoods and everything and, cheering for certain things. But that, the Gowers making the goblins based on a race that's unacceptable in my opinion, and it's weird. It's weird. Like, why did they do that? Was it actually the Gowers that made that quest? Because that came out, was it early 2006? I think it might have been early 2006 or something. I even was wondering that in the last video I uploaded as well. Not in the main channel. I don't even know where I'm going to upload this on. What channel I'm going to upload this on. But aside from when it was made, it does matter when it was made. It was made in 2006. Because people like to point out saying, well, they like to say that RuneScape has always been political. No, not really. Outside of that one quest, there might be a few lines here and there that would be considered political, right? But, I had a comment on one of my Dark Souls videos, not to get off topic again, but someone kept trying to tell me that that Dark Souls was quote-unquote modern American politics, left-wing politics, end quote. And at that point, that is complete delusion. You're saying that a Japanese developer, of course, they put American symbolism in their game sometimes, but to say that the story of Dark Souls itself is about modern American politics and slavery, I think you need to step back from your computer, and I think you need to go outside or something. All right, I'm not insulting you. I'm just simply saying what I'm thinking right now with my soul, that you should probably go outside. All right? But, I have to say that I don't think that quest, those allegories, you could have made the race of people that you're making an allegory for a completely different fictional race in the game. You could have made them anything. Why did you choose to make them goblins? Isn't that strange? That's weird to me. That's pretty weird. I don't think it fits RuneScape, Truthfully, I don't think that quest belongs in there either, just as much as, it's kind of an equal level to the Pride event. I'm uncomfortable with those being in the game. I don't know. It's strange to me. It's odd. It's weird. Let me look up when this quest was actually released. The one I was thinking of anyway. Lead developer is John A. I don't know if he actually wrote that, though. Okay, so it wasn't the Gowers. My bad. Yeah. I mean, the Gowers, really, they only really made, Mage Arena, and this is just the early quest, pretty much. So, yeah. Again, this was June 2006. The one Goblin quest I was thinking of. The Dorgeshin quest. The quest series, really, I should say. But no, it's strange, man. It's really strange. And again, I don't agree with that either. I don't agree with that either. But that does not mean RuneScape has always been political. Do you really think that kids playing the game back in the day, just running around, just having fun trading with each other? And, oh, by the way, I want to point out there has been a discussion on the Steam forums where there were users on there insulting me and saying that they should get rid of the quote-unquote white events from the game like Christmas and the quote-unquote white Christian events from the game, end quote, which is just racism. I don't know why these people think it's okay to spout racism. I mean, and by the way, Christmas is obviously Christ's Mass, right? That's what it is. It's a Christian holiday, but it's also, pagan as well. You have the Christmas tree and everything, and you don't see anybody complaining about that. And they keep talking about quote unquote straight white males as if they're living on 2014 Tumblr or something. I don't know. I don't know. Pretty strange stuff. Like I thought the quote unquote SJW stuff was over with, but apparently not. It's I don't know. I have I'm just tired of both of these the woke and the unwoke. I don't want to hear any of it anymore. And I'm tired of both sides pretending like they played this game when they didn't. Because some of them did play the game, right? Some of them actually hopped in for like 5 hours and played it. But I just had one tell me that they were a veteran and that they probably played the game longer than me. And I told them to show me the hours that they played. And they said they played 300 hours as if that was impressive to me. When I played this, almost my entire life. I don't want to say my entire life. I was born in 97, August 30th, 1997. So, I started playing 2005, however old I was then. I can't do math right now. But that's, and by the way, December 2005, obviously. So, just keep that in mind when you're trying to add the dates, the age together. It's, it's the same thing that happened with the Warhammer games. Like, I don't know if you guys saw, like, both, like multiple political sides trying to claim the hobby as their own, but it is the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. It really is. You have, and I don't want to mention any kind of side by name, by the way. I'm trying to avoid that. But you probably know the sides I'm talking about. And I mean multiple sides, by the way. I'm not talking about one. But you have, it's a disaster. And by the way, like people that are non-political, we have to archive when we can, where we can. And we have to save the actual history of the game before they try to rewrite it. Right? Before they try to go to our old forums and start removing posts. I just got banned from game FAQs. Like a couple months ago. And I'm getting banned from these old forums because of these political activists. It is so bad having, someone lead a website or like have leaders on a website like admins and moderators that can just ban you on a whim for whatever reason. And that's always been the case, for whatever reason. But nowadays, and I do want to point out the fact that you don't really see this too often in, other countries. It's typically American forums that try to enforce these kind of, rules and whatnot, right? Like, hey, this person just posted some kind of meme on an entirely different website. Let's ban him. That's wrong. That is, unless, the post is something absolutely egregious. Like, if someone's going around posting like the most messed up stuff ever, it's like, well, yeah, no, you obviously don't want that on the website. And, hey, I can post some, well, I'm trying to think of an example here. I really don't post that much, definitely not that much political stuff, but some people might consider it political. But what I'm talking about is genuinely like the really genuine nasty stuff that people sometimes post online. There goes a few motorcycles. I'm talking about stuff like gore, like someone posting gore or something. There's obviously people going around posting all sorts of deranged things, and I could understand not wanting to have those kind of people post on your forums and whatnot, obviously. Speaking of that, actually, that's something else I wanted to talk about, was the corruption aspect of this. When you're taking someone's childhood game and you're trying to corrupt it into a certain thing, like there was a reference that was put into old school RuneScape, and it was a reference to a political activist from the 90s, and I think they're still around. And they made a statement in the 90s, and allegedly during a Washington Post interview, they claim that there should be a week where racial violence is committed against a certain race because another race does it, which I don't agree with. I do not condone. I will never agree with that. That's disturbing. Everybody should disagree with that. It's disgusting. It's morbid. I could say every kind of word in the book at that. Nobody should be saying that kind of stuff. And there's a reference to that person in old school RuneScape by using the soul jar item on the soul altar. The political activist shows up in the game and starts dancing around. How weird is this? Do I even? Can you wrap your head around this? Can you wrap your soul around this? How is this in a medieval fantasy game from 2001? How? Please tell me how a reference to someone that wants racial conflict, racial violence against other people, how is that even a reference in the game? And you know what? That's why I was called bigot by the admin of the old school RuneScape wiki. Because I wanted to point that out in the description. I said this was by a political activist that made this statement, and he called me a bigot for saying I disagree with what is basically, that's incitement to violence against a certain race of people. And he's going to sit there and, say that he agrees with pronouns, he agrees with banning me for the reason, quote unquote, bigot. And then he's going to make the ban reason on the entire old school RuneScape wiki, supposedly, which I have a picture of this. Someone got banned. Someone got banned on the old school RuneScape wiki, the official old school RuneScape wiki. And their ban message said Timeliest G, a variation of my name, of my username. Just think of who else could have possibly done that, Of course, a wiki admin. So, aside from just editing the wiki for a page, going around, calling me a bigot, supposedly, this part I'm not sure on, but around the same time, I was getting very odd, threatening Discord messages too. And by the way, he contacted, I don't think I mentioned this in my other video, he contacted the RuneLite Discord server admins, and he had me banned from that too. So that's pretty strange. And I have proof that he did it as well. I have proof of that because I wanted to go contact him and send him a piece of my mind. I went on there, so from the RuneLite server, and I saw him in there. That's how I messaged him, and he went to go contact him. He's like, "Hey, this guy's whatever, doing whatever," and he had me banned from that. Aside from those three things, he also goes and just edits the entire ban message on the website to say Timeliest G whenever someone gets banned. So talk about obsessed. You can call me obsessed because I made a few videos, but I really just need to spread the word about this. Oh, let's talk about the other changes in old school RuneScape, by the way. Let's talk about the skin paste item, which is just called paste now. They turned the skin paste item from a pale pinkish color to darker, and they took the blonde wig in the game from the Prince Ali Rescue quest. Both of these items are from the Prince Ali Rescue quest, and made the wig less blonde. Could you imagine? Hey, I just want to point out, could you imagine this being in the opposite direction and making a dark wig blonde and, dark skin paste, like, brighter? Could you imagine if it was the other way around? And by the way, whoever at Jagex is making these changes also changed the, if this is the same person, there was that new bull quest where they have a reference to swallowing bull. How do I put this without getting demonetized? They think it's appropriate to put that in the game, talking about swallowing something from a bull. And that was mod other, by the way. That was mod other that put that in there. Again, do not message them. Just leave them be. It should be pointed out that they've put this in the game though. And there was also the clue scroll step that was removed from the game. I forgot if it was a hard or medium one. I've done a lot of clue scrolls, but I don't remember which one it was. I think it was, it might have been hard, but it was talking about how white knights are trained and how black knights are trained in the game. These two different, these two different kingdoms of, just knights and whatnot. I say kingdoms, but it's not really kingdom. They're both in the same place pretty much. just across from each other, the White Knights and the Black Knights. And Jagex saw this, and they pictured it as a race war. I'm not joking. I am not making this up. Whoever, the Pride kind of, activist that wanted to put Pride that didn't put Pride in the game, but was agreeing with the Pride stuff, they saw that that agrees with pronouns also. They saw that this clue scroll step talking about White and Black Knights, what they referred to it, they must have implied that, in their mind, it must have been implying some kind of, war against different races, because they removed it. They just changed the wording of it, I should say. It no longer says White Knights or Black Knights. It says, the Kinshire Knights, and it's strange. And what do you even say about that? The kind of person that thinks that way. That thinks that, fictional knights in a game, and that they view it as white versus black. How messed up is that? And these are the same people that will try to call you racist, by the way. These are the same people that will try to call you racist. That's like the owner of Wikifur, what I was talking about before. There's actually an admin on Wikifur. It might be the owner of Wikifur, I'm not sure. That's also calling me all of these things. And he called me that when I said I don't agree with hiring people based on the color of their skin. Can you picture the irony of that for a second? Someone calling me a racist and a bigot, banning me, for saying that I don't agree with hiring someone based on the color of their skin. Isn't it the other way around? Wouldn't they be like the biggest racists of all time if they're making a list of people to hire based on whether they're black, white, what? What do you even say it to? You can't say anything to them. They're illogical. They are not logical whatsoever. And what else was there? There was the only dark elf that was in the game, right? And I'm referring to skin color here. The only dark elf that was in the game in RuneScape at the time, before they made an update, and Mod G put all the new elf models in, which I don't like, but that's just my opinion. The elf Alund, right? Now, I was actually a fan of this character. And again, it was the only dark elf in the game. I can't state that enough, right? Now, typically elves are fair-skinned, right? Because that's just how they're portrayed. That's how they've always been portrayed. It's not a white or Caucasian thing. It's just they have light skin. But some people see that as meaning white people are Caucasian, and for some reason they have prejudice against them. So that has nothing to do with this right now, other than Mod G actually making a lot of the elves a whole bunch of different colors, even like orange, and I think one even looks purple or something. But anyway, the Elf Alun, her examine text, when you would examine her, said this is one of the most beautiful elves I've ever seen, or something like that. Now, what do you see anything wrong with complimenting someone like that? Like, hey, you're beautiful, you're amazing. You're absolutely shining, you're brimming, Apparently, the same people that thought Black Knights versus White Knights was about real life races fighting each other, the same person that made the supposedly made the I say supposedly because I don't know if this was all the same person doing this or if it was different employees at the time, but same person or not that made the skin paste less white, that made the blonde wig less blonde. Sorry, I've been talking for an hour and 4 minutes now. Also I have allergies too, which isn't helping. They changed it. They saw that item. They saw the description of Alund, and they changed it. And you want to know what they changed it to? You want to know what they actually changed it to? Instead of "this is the most beautiful elf I've ever seen," quote end quote, they said, now it says when you examine her, a graceful elf or an agile elf. I think it says. Let me see what it says. Let me see. Yeah, a graceful elf. Really? Really? Again, these are the same people that will call you a racist. They are the biggest racist. They are so focused, hyper fixated on the color of someone's skin, on what they think, their politics. They are so hyper fixated that they will just latch on to this stuff. They will latch on to not, your traits as a person, your actual spiritual traits, like what you've accomplished, what you've done. Unless you've done a bad thing, because then they'll demonize it for you. Like they will demonize you permanently, like what they did in Notch. For example, or any other developer that dared speak their mind, that dared think just a little bit differently than they did. And hey, I'm not defending everything that Notch said, but that was just an example. It's strange to me. These are the people that want to try to ruin your childhood, that want to take that childhood innocence and corrupt it in the form of movies, video games. They want to take anything pure. RuneScape is a pure game. This is a game that millions of people, built friendships on. They built everlasting, just adventures, journeys that it's going to stick with them for all of eternity. After we're long and gone from this earth, it's going to still stick with us in the afterlife and everything. They want to take that and they want to try to ruin it, which is impossible. But they're still going to try. And the reason why it's impossible is because of people like us. We're not going to stand for it. We're going to legally and lawfully document, archive, and save all of this stuff. And by the way, again, genuinely, there's no possible way they could possibly rewrite this because of people's efforts like mine. The same thinking people like us, that if you're watching this right now, if you're watching this all the way through, you probably agree with the sentiment that we should save, video games and arts, just any kind of art, whatever kind of art, the video game is representing. Whether it's a video game can represent any kind of art, really. But I'm sure no matter, as long as you're not hyper politicized, I'm sure that, even if we disagree on some things, this is something that we can agree on, is that the original intent, the original author's intent should be saved and preserved no matter what. There should be no mistranslations. There should be no intentional mistranslations. There should be no remakes or remasters that remove certain dialogue from a game because it's deemed quote-unquote offensive. You're just burning books, and you need to stop doing that because we're not going to stand for it. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to keep legally and lawfully speaking out against this. We're going to be documenting, archiving. We have it all saved. We have all of this stuff saved. And, personally, I know me and a whole bunch of other people that are helping each other on this. We have set up in place a method where this stuff will be saved. What RuneScape originally was will actually be saved permanently. Not just RuneScape, but any kind of old forum posts and everything. There are so many screenshots, so many things of a game that you can take. You can take, the cache files. You can see the screenshots of it. You can take all these things. And there's just so many of them that, they can't rewrite it all. They can just use any kind of archive, not just the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, but any kind of archive. There's too much information. You can't stop it. The stray sound effect. If you try to censor something, it's going to come back so much, brighter. The soul is going to come out, and it's going to consume all evil. The evil cannot, tamper with this. So that admin on the old school RuneScape wiki, you failed. There's nothing you can do to, prevent this, to try to spread your ideology. It's over. And I'm assuming that, you've seen in recent times in America that, hey, things are getting a little bit better, right? But it's going to snowball. It's going to get even better and better and better. It's going to return back to how it was in the 2000s and 90s, and it's going to make you squeal, because I've seen pictures of these kind of people squealing at photos of the 2000s or 90s. Like, let's say that there's a photo of some people in college or some classes in school, laughing, smiling together, all having fun together. And for some reason, these people, I don't know if you've seen this before, but they try to demonize everybody in the photo, and they'll say that the 2000s were racist, it's evil. They'll say that the 2000s is right wing, which doesn't make any sense. They'll keep saying that the 90s and 2000s were so bad when it was. If you look at rates, certain kind of rates of let's say people being alive, I'm just trying to avoid censorship. You'll see that everybody was so happy in the 2000s, especially the early 2000s. Everything was booming. It was so, I almost want to say perfect. And that's not just because I was, around most of the time when I was younger in that era, since I was born in 97. But overall, you can look at statistics on this. Generally, everybody was overall happy. And history is like a plague to these political activists that want to rewrite history. It's like a plague to them. So that's why you need to protect it from them. And we will never let them, do what they're doing. Again, we do this always in a legal and lawful manner. All we're doing is just archiving. That's all we have to do. And, all you have to do is just speak your mind on this stuff. All you have to do is just speak your mind. And that's enough to drive them out. It's the same thing with saying that you love Jesus Christ. Look at the kind of reaction you get from some of these people when you say that, right? Look at the kind of reaction you get when you praise Heavenly Father God. It's not the same as internet atheists back in the 2000s. The reactions now from these political activists, it's almost like holy water was just poured around them or something. It's a completely different reaction than how, like I said, the atheists reacted back in the day. It's strange. It's strange because, the thing is, nobody had this ideology back in the 2000s, back in the 90s, or any point before that. Nobody had this ideology. It didn't exist. Like, nobody was going around with this exact gender ideology, identity politics. It's odd. And again, you can just go in the history and see this, and that's why they hate it. They don't want you to go look at archives. They don't want you to see old stuff. They don't want you to read books. And these are the same people that call you media illiterate when they completely misinterpret what a game actually is intentionally. It's the same thing as translators taking Japanese text and adding modern American slang. And your modern American politics did not exist back in the day. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I said this multiple times before. And personally, I think that, I won't say anymore. I'll just say that, there's nothing really that they can do, right? But even though there's nothing they can do, we can still archive as much as possible. Try to save as many videos as possible from whatever game you like. There's videos from so many years ago now on YouTube. And try to save old forums on the Wayback Machine. There's a website called, let me see. There's a website called Weeby, right? And there's sometimes it'll give you old forums, but sometimes it'll give you new ones. Just save a whole bunch of old forums, save a whole bunch of old videos, whether they be on YouTube or a different site. Save a whole bunch of old games, just to save, legally speaking, obviously. Get the games legally, just save them legally and lawfully. Save everything you can, because that makes people squeal. That makes these political activists squeal. They don't like it. They start hissing at you. They start absolutely hissing at you when you try to save stuff like this. And I think a part of the reason for that is people like to call them election tourists, and I think it's pretty fitting considering most of this stuff started happening. Well, it really started to kick off around 2014. It slowed down, and then 2016 happened, and a whole bunch of people got internet access and started using the internet. That might be a reason why, and that's why they don't like anything prior to that point. I don't know. That's just my own theory. But the one reason why they really, really don't like it is because they know that their ideology and the way they think it wasn't a thought back then. Nobody was thinking the same way they did back then. Not in any point in history, by the way. This is modern American, stuff. It doesn't matter what side you're on. The things that people believe and think now, it just was not a thing. Modern American stuff, like, you don't see this. Well, okay, the modern American politics do spread to other countries. You can see this with a lot of other modern games now. There's also that other game that's pretending to be an indie game when it's not, that just came out recently, called Mix something. But yeah, that's not an indie game. That was made by some kind of millionaire or even a billionaire or something, allegedly. So, and it has supposedly has propaganda in it too. But that's all I have to talk about, I guess. Weird stuff. I just wanted to talk about RuneScape, and it's going to get into politics because there's political activists trying to rewrite the history of the game, and they're trying to rewrite childhood games, movies, books, everything like that. So just keep archiving. Don't let any of these political activists try to get their way, and it will never happen anyway. But just be careful. Just legally and lawfully archive. Tell them to stop doing it, and tell them to stop. Trying to rewrite archives. I should say, stop trying to rewrite our childhood games, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. Speak out against it as much as possible. These, they're just drones at the end of the day. That's it. They're just mindless drones that want to go to your forums and pretend like they were always there. When you can easily tell the difference between, well, I'm gonna talk about certain hobbies here, right? You can tell the difference, for example, between, a furry like me that's been browsing these forums for a long time. And, even if someone did browse, like, let's say furry forums, for example, back in the day, they didn't have the same ideology they do now if they're like one of those political activists now, right? They weren't talking about the same stuff as they were back then. For the most part, the most things that they supposedly, quote unquote, believe in. There's a difference between an older 2000s goth and a modern goth that's just there for attention. That's why people put these pride flags on themselves, these sexualities. Like I said, you have a normal gay person, normal lesbian person, normal trans person, and then you have these people that just do it for attention, and they'll call themselves those things. They'll call themselves a sexuality even though they're not. They'll call themselves a RuneScape fan even though they're not. That's pretty much it. God bless. Heavenly Father, God bless you. Angels bless you. Jesus Christ bless you. Lord and Savior Jesus Christ bless you. And I will see you all around. Farewell for now until the next video. That sounded pretty generic. I don't know what else to say though. So see ya. I just got done with that last recording around 20 minutes ago, and there's a few things I wanted to add. I wanted to talk about that fourth reason that I didn't mention before. The fourth reason why I wanted to keep these RuneScape archives to myself and those close to me. That reason being, I don't know if this is a larger reason or, I think the other ones are more important why I don't want to release it, to be fair. But there was this one YouTuber that, and by the way, there's actually a YouTuber called the RuneScape Historian. That is not who I'm talking about. I am talking about someone that just simply refers to themselves as that. That's not what their channel name is, and do not seek any of these people out also. Strange thing is about the RuneScape Historian, though, is I was for some reason banned from his Discord. I didn't even watch that many of his videos, I don't think. I think I just, joined his Discord just out of curiosity's sake and just got banned from that, so that was pretty strange. But outside of that, just wanted to talk about that fourth reason here, and that is a different YouTuber that has over 100,000 subscribers, and he is just stealing people's footage without crediting them And I do believe allegedly he is pretending that, that footage is his. It's a very strange thing. It reminds me of that one streamer that pretended like they actually earned an Infernal cape when they didn't. He was pretending like he was doing the Inferno when someone else. It was just a pre-recorded footage of someone else getting it for him, and he throws his hands up in the air to celebrate, right? And you can see the pre-recorded footage is still moving with the mouse and everything. It was what causes someone that is the tourist. That is the exact definition of a hobby tourist, a video game tourist. I don't understand that. And by the way, again, do not, don't message any of these people. They've clearly been humiliated enough. This person that, stole footage from me, stole footage from other people. His entire channel is just based on, taking other people's, footage, their work, and just remixing it, rewriting it. And you could say that that's the same for a lot of other channels, of course. But I think he, his quote-unquote work, quote-unquote his work, I should say, you need a credit where it's needed, honestly. You can't just go and take all these things. And then he's mad at Jagex, which he started to dislike Jagex supposedly dislike Jagex around the same time Mod North got in and started taking the politics out of the game and started making it, just less real world stuff in the game, right? So I wonder why this guy, this other person, started making anti Jagex videos all of a sudden. He wasn't doing that when they were adding a bunch of other political stuff in the game that's not related to the game at all, that makes me and my husband feel uncomfortable in the game. He wasn't talking about that. It's only when they started removing that stuff did he start making anti Jagex videos. So quite a few things I wanted to mention. It's the same kind of people as well. I don't really want to get into, why I dislike AI or anything, but you can tell that the same kind of people also, AI is not a political thing, but it is being made political, right? Just like everything else. They're trying to turn everything political, but I am absolutely against AI, any form of it. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe not even chatbots. I was kind of tame on the chatbots and stuff, but they're just going to pick up false information from Reddit. They're just going to hallucinate because it's not conscious. It's not a sentient thing, and it will never be sentient. It will never be conscious. It will never have a soul. You're basically dumping trillions of dollars into this this AI scam, and what you get out of it is basically no different than Cleverbot pretending to be Hare O'Brien or Ben Drowned or something. I don't know. I think, if you need to use that as a crutch, right? Like, why don't you just actually learn something for once? And they're comparing it to calculators, typewriters, and phones coming out. And that is, no, you are actually using the calculator, and you are, you're fully inputting things into code, right? Not speaking of a calculator specifically. I'm talking about, if you're designing something and you're writing code, you're making it, that full process is you. When you're taking a picture with a camera, they also compare it to cameras. When you're taking a picture with a camera, that's a part of you. You're actually looking around and you're seeing what you want to, photo. You need to get the perfect shot. That's all you. That is all you there doing that. That is such a bad faith argument to try to compare AI to that when AI is just thievery. It's just theft. AI is theft, and that's all it is, and that's all it's useful for is scamming people. And the people that fall for it and try to bite the bait and try to condone it, saying, we're going to replace you, we're going to replace you. Where did those people go that said they were going to replace artists, huh? After dumping trillions of dollars into it, running these factories, what came of it? A whole bunch of memes? A whole bunch of you're taking someone else's voice, which is still really it doesn't even copy someone's voice perfectly. Hey, sometimes sometimes it does, but you're using it to joke around and make not safe for work content with it. Really, that's what AI is good for. Which, okay, I mean, there's nothing else to say about it. And I want to talk about companies that are using it for concept art and like game planning, story, lore. Who would want to play that? Who would want to play something that has no thought put behind it? Just the people that like seeing things move on a screen. You know, I was just in a Dark Souls thread the other day on V, and there was someone saying that they only play the games for the gameplay and nothing else. They don't like to think about why something is in the game. You know, for example, the Skull and Ash Lake. They don't. They actually go after people and they insult people for theorizing. Like, they despise theorists. And I got called, you know, something very strange, actually. Someone called me an autistic child because I like to theorize with other people about video games like Deltarune, Dark Souls, you know, any kind of video game, really, you know, just anything. And it's strange to get called that because I don't see anything wrong with an autistic child. And I have a feeling like it's the same kind of people that say those awful things about, you know, war, and they agree with war. They agree with desensitizing people. Like, why would you insult somebody by calling them, you know, a child? It's just, does that make them feel more like an adult? What does it mean to be an adult? What does that actually mean? You know, if anything, I think there's something wrong with fully putting yourself into the shoes of an adult. You know, you have to make tough decisions in life. You have to, you know, grow up and, you know, really, you know, take some hits in life. But you do not fully remove the child inside of you. You do not remove your innocence, your purity. And these people are impure that try to get you to agree with war footage, that try to get you to agree with horrific things. Again, I'm not mentioning any specific group here. I am not insulting any specific group or generalizing anyone. I do not agree with that, and I have never done that, and I will not do that. But at the end of the day, there's just these subsections. they're agreeing with this stuff. And, you know, again, I do not see anything wrong with someone who is autistic or someone who is a child. I think there's something wrong with those that try to claim that there is. It's something that's it's what else what words can you use to describe, you know, absolute evil in this world that tries to go after children, that tries to go after disabled people, you know? It's just evil at the end of the day, I guess. It's just evil. And, you know, you have to spread goodness, you have to spread goodwill, you have to spread holiness, and that's basically it. You know, I just want to talk about the stuff I just mentioned for a little bit because I feel like it needs to be talked about. But anyway, going back to the gameplay, some people in the thread, right, were saying that they only agree with the gameplay in the game, and they absolutely despise any kind of story elements, you know, level design, you know, environmental storytelling. They absolutely despise that, and they actually, like I said, they openly insult and attack other people for, you know, liking historian lore of video games. These are the people that hate art. You know, they absolutely despise art. And, you know, let me go back to this post, actually, right? I want to find this post again where I was replying to this person, right? And these people genuinely like seeing things move on the screen. Like, all they care about is if something's moving on the screen. They don't care about anything else. They don't theorize. They don't think. Here, okay, so this is my comment, all right? I was responding to this guy who said, I'm an R word, F slur, you know, and then he calls me, you know, autistic, a child, all these, like every single word in the book, basically. And I said, this is what I said, you know, going out of your way to philosophize, well, I can't even read today, philosophize. And this is what I said here, right? I said, you know, going out of your way to question why something is put in a game, you know, makes one those kind of insults. You know, do you say the same thing about books? No matter what someone creates, everything that goes into a piece of art is a culmination of that person's life, unless the piece of art is malicious and made as propaganda with no thought behind it. It's interesting seeing and pondering on what the intent is behind certain things. This is called wonder. Older games required your imagination. Newer games, a lot of the time, do not require it. So, imagination becomes sort of a thing of a past for some people. You have these people become so distant from their imagination and thought and wonder that they just despise it. They just have unthinkingness. That's, it's very strange. And then, after I typed this comment out to him, he replies with a picture of my profile online and says, "Of course he's a furry." That's the only response. Oh, and then he says, he says that I'm only talking about the story and that I don't care about gameplay. People are not looking for a civil discussion anymore. I'm not saying everybody, obviously. That's a small subsection of people. But there's people that they just make something up immediately. And I mean immediately, not in the middle of a conversation, right at the beginning. They will just make up stuff about you, your argument, and they will say, "Oh, this person said this," when they didn't, even though in the thread you can see that I never mentioned being anti-gameplay. It's like, what? I seriously have no idea what goes through. Nothing goes through their minds, clearly. But it's strange. It is so odd, It's like people want to make the other person a villain as much as possible, just because they don't like what the person is or who they are. It reminds me of this one VR chat clip, one of those friends I mentioned before, one of those quote-unquote friends sent me before, of someone accusing a furry of being a whole bunch of other stuff, very malicious things, right? He's maliciously lying, making stuff up about the furry. It's like, "Oh yeah, all of you furries do this." And then the furry in VR chat says, he's clearly joking. He's like, "Yeah, no, we do all of that. Yep, you're so right. You are so right. We do all of that." And you can clearly tell he's just playing along with the guy that's doing that. And then it gets taken as a clip and posted on Twitter, right? And it gets shared around all over the place. And like, "Look, the furry just admitted to doing all this stuff, that they do all this stuff. Look, they just admitted it." Like, they will intentionally, they intentionally understand that you're joking, but they pretend like you're not joking just to villainize you or whatever kind of word. It's so ridiculous, just to make you a villain. It's so childish, and these are the people calling you a child as well. And again, there's nothing wrong with being childish unless it's in the bad kind of a way, where you're intentionally being ignorant and not listening to people fully. Like, you judge a book by its cover, basically. And what else is there to talk about, really? It's just strange, I don't think people are thinking as much as they used to. Again, like I said, this is a small subsection of people online, right? But seeing, what I was talking about before, people that I watched in my childhood, like Stuttering Craig, for example, allegedly agreeing with what this official government Twitter account was posting, splicing war footage in of people being, with children's video games. It's horrific, and like I said, it's psychotic. You have to be a sociopath to post stuff like that, and especially to actually laugh at it. Like, you're actually laughing. And by the way, I'm not talking about, this is clearly different than some guy just posting, some edgy stuff online. This is an actual government, and you're trying to tell me, right, that one guy I mentioned before, the one guy I knew, you're going to sit there and you're going to tell me there's no difference in between an actual government body posting stuff like that and some random 4chan user. Really? I don't mean to say the word user. That's not really, like a user of 4chan, not like, but yeah, it's I don't know, I don't know. I guess on an unrelated note, I do like the fact that people are starting to understand that 4chan is just free speech and anybody is allowed to post there. Because for a long time, there was propaganda spread against 4chan. You know, those idiots that are going, quote unquote, who is this 4chan? Probably intentional. Maybe, allegedly, supposedly. I don't know. That's just my theory. You know, trying to, like I said, villainize this website, this forum. And, you know, there's been a push to censor old forums. Like I said, you know, history rewriters. There's been a push to get these websites taken offline, these old forums taken offline. Through, like, by any means, like, they're trying to use any means to do it, which I don't agree with. I don't, you know, I do not condone that. All of these should be left up. You know, I support free speech to a certain extent. You can't have, you know, total free speech most of the time because you really do want a civil conversation at the end of the day. You know, you don't want someone, you know, for example, you don't want psychopaths looking at a character in a video game and saying this character is me. This is actually me in real life. So this character supports my rights as an individual. And they went through surgery just like I did. If you start making stuff up like that, like if you're saying Gwendolyn represents you, you should probably look into the lore of the game first off. Secondly, that's delusional. Every time they say like a character represents them, it's really bad. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that. And then you have the other side, and they'll see that a character just happens to be like 3 different colors, like pastel colors, like blue or white, and then immediately they start saying, oh, this character is someone that I hate. It's a group of people that I hate because I was told to hate them. So this game is bad and it's woke. Both of these sides are completely, they're crazy. They're crazy in the head. They are completely insane. You can't tell me that that's normal. Like, that is not normal behavior. And you can ask me what's normal. It's not that. I can't give you a definition of normal, but I can probably give a good idea of what's not normal. You know, seeing 3 colors and that being like a code that sets you off or something is, I don't know, pretty strange. And that goes for either side, by the way. You know, it's strange that goes for any side of the political spectrum in America, I should say, just in America. Like, they see colors like that, and either one thinks it's supporting or against their side. Just because a virtual character, has different colors on them. It's like, whoa. It's crazy. What other word can you use for that? Oh yeah, I was going to mention that AI stuff as well, with developers using AI in video games. And the thing that gets me the most, right, is being so creatively bankrupt, having absolutely no imagination, 0 imagination, to the point where you actually have to use it in concept art and planning and story and lore. Are you serious? Are you actually serious? Using it for concept art and story. Who would want to play something that has no thought into it? I know I mentioned this before, but why would you want to play something that has no meaning behind it? You know, when I'm playing something like Dark Souls again, for instance, when I'm playing Dark Souls and I look at a texture on a wall, I wonder where that texture came from. I wonder what they were thinking when modeling an enemy, you know, like Nito's model, for example. You know, I wonder what they were thinking when they were coming up with that, what kind of thoughts they had. What does it mean in terms of the game itself, the lore? Now, absolutely everything you see in a game that was made by actual real people's hands that had no AI in it whatsoever, when you're looking at something like that was something that has no AI at all, you're looking at a piece of art that is a culmination of everything that, you know, developers, you know, faced in life, everything that they experienced, you know, everything that they're thinking at the moment when they're making something, what something is inspired by, if it's an original, you know, creation of theirs, if it's just, you know, the artist intent. And AI does not have intent, and that's, you know, that's the end of the story. It cannot have intent, and it can never be art, because AI cannot create art. No matter how much you prompt it, you know, that's not yours. You didn't make it. It's AI, Luigi. You didn't make it.